2, 1. Right, we are live. What's going on, everybody? Jacob Donovan here with Miami Dolphins Syndicate, and we are joined today by our Denver Broncos affiliate, Denver Broncos Syndicate, here with Gage. Gage, how you doing today, man?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, we had our Chargers fan on in the first podcast, and man, it was awesome having him on the show. But it's really cool that we get somebody from one of our partner channels here on the show today. We haven't gotten to do anything like this before, so again, thank you for coming on with us.
Yeah, man, absolutely. We've got a few Syndicate cross collabs this year, so really awesome to have for you to have me on.
Yeah, do you have any other ones on your schedule this year?
Let's see. We got Lions, so I'll definitely be doing something with
Okay,
Red.
yeah.
I want to get in touch with the Jets guy because we've got Jets, and I want to say one more. Oh, we got Vikings, yeah. So I'll probably be doing something with Trey too.
Okay, so you're just going on a world tour of all the Syndicate channels, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, Donovan, we have the Jets guy who, I mean, I forget he exists because he's not in that group chat. Like, is there anybody else on the slate that we have this year? I don't think so.
No, we don't have the Lions, the Vikings. Do we play the Steelers? No, we don't play the Steelers.
No,
We play the Ravens.
we play the Ravens for like the 17th season in a row. What?
Because we
In
keep
Baltimore.
we keep placing in the same place in the division.
Yeah.
so
What was the last year? What was the last year that we didn't play the Ravens?
2020.
No, I think we played them.
20?
Did we?
No, we played them in 2020.
I think it was. I think it might have been like 2017. Like I think 2017 or
I think it
2018. I
was-
think it might be that far back.
Yeah.
I know you guys played in 17 because that was the game that Kiko Alonso knocked out Joe Flacco.
Check, please.
Oh yeah.
Check, please.
Wait,
Yo,
no, that
like-
was that 16 or 17?
That was 17.
Okay.
Okay.
All the years of
Thursday
the
Night
Dolphins being
Football.
trash just kind of just molds together.
Hey,
Mhm.
16 was playoff season, man.
We've just had so
Like all
many.
years of Denver.
Yeah. Yeah, we're two organizations, I guess, that are in very similar places. We last played each other. That was 2020. That was Tua's first season, and Vic Fangio, as head coach, took the victory over us. What was your experience like with Vic Fangio as your head coach?
Oh man, Vic Fangio is a very polarizing figure here in Broncos country. You either love him or you hate him. I definitely have had my qualms with Vic Fangio on a player relations level, as well as just a schematic level. I'll just keep it to schematics here. His scheme, I mean, it's a very bend but don't break predicated scheme. I mean, as you guys saw in week one, it's very vulnerable to giving up huge chunk plays in the run game. And
Yeah.
I've also, if you don't have five guys in the secondary that have gelled together and are able to communicate together at a very high level, then you're going to have busts in coverage at times with Vic Fangio's scheme, as Denver fans have found out the hard way. So those are some qualms with it as well. And he did start to dial up his blitzes a little bit more, especially in the second half of that Chargers game. And I'm still getting ready to go and review what he did in that New England game to make adjustments, because that's what I'm really curious to see is how he made those adjustments from week one to week two. I'm still going through and kind of picking through my film like that. But just going off of my experiences with Vic Fangio as our head coach and defensive mastermind, I've had some qualms with it.
Yeah, it's been a mixed bag for the first two games so far. The first game was, pretty bad, and then last week definitely saw a difference in his shifts. So Donovan, from Dolphins fan perspective, we've had 2 weeks of him. 1 week where, I mean, that bend not break really came to the forefront where we're like, maybe eventually we'll stop him. We stopped him on that last drive. Patriots, it wasn't really too big of a challenge. But what is your thoughts so far on how Vic Fangio has been for us at defensive coordinator?
So I did say it's going to take a little bit because it's a lot more complicated of a scheme, and the defense was in the previous scheme for 4 years, which is a long time. So to kind of jump from that, which is a man-heavy scheme, to a zone-heavy scheme, that's a big adjustment. So I knew there was going to be some kinks to work out. But I mean, having gone from one of the best run-stopping defensive lines in the league to week one, we get gassed by Austin Eckler, who is known for not being able to run in between the tackles and just takes pretty much, he's a fantasy superstar because he catches a ton of screens. So to have him kind of just tear us up in the middle of the line, I was like, I wanted to see David Long more, and Baker a little bit less. And we got to see David Long play a lot more in the last game, but for the unfortunate reason that Phillips was out and Van Ginkel was moved from the inside to the outside. So it's definitely going to take some time. And I think, with the offenses that we have coming up, like the Broncos, the Giants, I don't think anything is too dynamic to the point where it's going to just tear us up like the Chargers did. So I'm looking forward to more adjustments, and definitely I do like that he was throwing more blitzes out there at the end of the Chargers game and throughout the Patriots game. So, I mean, we'll see what's going on.
Yeah, it's definitely still a work in progress, and the defense still isn't at full strength as we're still missing Jalen Ramsey. We're going to see if Jalen Phillips is able to come back, and still missing Nick Needham. Brandon Jones hasn't had a big role, so we still haven't seen the full strength of what this defense can be under Vic Fangio. So it was with you guys in Denver, Gage, it was definitely a mixed bag with the experience of Vic Fangio, and now you're 2 games into the experience. Just forgot his name. Sean Payton. Jeez, well, I was about to say Sean Tucker. I'm like, that's definitely incorrect. You're two games into the Sean Payton experience. You're 0-2. You lost. I believe at home both games to the Raiders, and then last week that shootout, that last second Hail Mary got us all really excited. But you are 0-2, and now starting off a rough run of games, starting with the Dolphins this week. What would you say has gone wrong in those first 2 games that has led to you guys falling to 0-2?
Oh, so it's really been a plethora of things that have gone wrong over these last couple of weeks. I feel like on the offensive side of the ball, there's been times in the second half where we haven't been able to sustain drives once we get off of those scripted plays. Especially in the run game, they've really struggled to find an identity in the second half once we get off script and defenses have time to adjust to our run game and in turn be able to take away the play action game. They've tried to depend a little bit more on the drop back quick game, and there's been kind of mixed results there. Defensively, it's been pretty disastrous, I'm going to be honest. In week 1, Vance Joseph's defense was getting picked apart by Jimmy Garoppolo. Our pass rush was able to get nothing done against the Raiders' offensive line. That was partially a credit to Jimmy Garoppolo because he did a great job sliding the protection and identifying where the pressure was coming from for Denver all game long. But even in the Washington game, man, we saw flashes of it in the first half with Randy Gregory and Nick Benito able to get some pressure in there. And then Jonathan Cooper did have a key strip sack. So we're seeing it with our edge rushers, the pressure and the production start to get there, but interior defensive line's been a massive disappointment. Zach Allen was brought in on a massive free agent contract, and he's done virtually nothing in the orange and blue. In the secondary, Pat Surtain's obviously a stud, but alongside him at the second boundary corner spot, we've had some big issues with Damari Mathis, and I'm really worried if Jalen Waddle does indeed play in this one, because whichever one Pat Surtain is locking down, Damari Mathis is going to have to deal with the other one. And with Tyreek Hill, I feel like Mathis has the raw speed to keep up with Tyreek Hill, but we all know Tyreek Hill is an elite route runner as well, and he can leave Mathis in the dirt. So I'm very concerned about our second boundary corner spot, but one guy who's really stepped up for us in the secondary has been our nickel, Essane Bassi. Our starting nickel, K'Wan Williams, has been on IR, but Bassi over these last couple of weeks and in training camp as well has really come into his own as a solid player at the NFL level.
Yeah, Donovan, I definitely remember I was talking to you, I think it was even on Sunday, right after the game had finished, where we got to see the end of that game. It was the only game left on CBS. And we also caught a little bit because we were watching the Dolphins game at Hooters, and we got to see both games going on at the same time when you guys were playing the Raiders. And I definitely remember saying to Donovan, like, this defense definitely looks like it's regressed from the last couple of years. And the stats back it up. Defense currently 16th in the NFL in yards allowed per game, 21st in passing yards, 11th in the NFL in rushing yards. So I guess you are a little bit better against the run just in terms of the grand, looking at everything across the NFL. But you're also allowing 26 points per game, which is, it's not a great place to be when you're 23rd in the NFL in points allowed per game. And so you have on one side with Russell Wilson, you're trying to figure out what he's got. You're trying to figure out, is he going to live up to what he used to be in Seattle? Is he going to be that guy? But you came into the season expecting the defense to be the side of the ball that at the very least you know what you're going to get from them. And so far, I mean, you look at the statistics on both sides of the ball, they're really middle of the road to bad. Like I said, 16th, 21st, 11th, and 23rd in those statistics on defense. On offense, 16th in yards per game, 15th in points per game, 15th in rushing yards a game. You've only had 2 turnovers, but you've only gotten 1 turnover. So like it's just a lot of middle of the road right now. So Donovan, with all that being said, does that sort of excite you more going against the Broncos? Like, we do know that aspect that Jalen Waddle might be out, but knowing that you're not going to quite get the defense that we thought we were getting out of the Broncos, does that excite you?
It definitely does, especially before the season. They still have one of the best safeties in the league, but so far through the 2 days of practice, Justin Simmons has been out with a hip injury. So that kind of doesn't help them over the top with Tyreek Hill. So even if you put Surtain, one of the best corners in the game and son of legendary Dolphin Patrick Surtain Sr., I had to throw that out there. Even if you have him on Tyreek Hill, it's still going to be like you're not going to be able to cover him over. No one has the speed of Tyreek Hill, and he's just not going to be able to keep up over the top. So it's going to be exciting still, regardless if Justin Simmons doesn't play. I don't know if he's leaning towards not playing or kind of just maybe this is rest for his hip. But regardless of that, yeah, the other side of things, if Waddle doesn't play, like we still have Ezukama and Braxton Berrios, obviously not the same as Waddle, but I have trust and faith in Mike McDaniel to be able to scheme something up for those guys to be able to get open and make some plays.
Yeah, the Broncos are dealing with a lot less injuries than the Dolphins are currently. You look at the Dolphins injury report, you're talking Savon Ahmed with the groin, Jalen Waddle with his concussion, Armstead, Campbell, Raekwon Davis, Julian Hill, Tyler Kroft, Jalen Phillips, Tyreek Hill, Andrew Van Ginkel, and Xavier Howard. Just also a lot of key names on that list. Now, most of those guys are probably going to play. Like Tyreek Hill ended up being a full participant in practice. Jalen Waddle is still yet to practice. He's gone through some warm-ups, gone through some stretches at the beginning of practice, but has not participated at all in team drills. And then you look over at the Broncos injury report. There's only four guys on there, but definitely 2 very key players with Frank Clark, Justin Simmons, as well as Mike Purcell and Garrett Boyles? Yeah, Garrett Boyles. Tackle. So of those 4 guys, who do you go into this week expecting to have at hand, and what would be the biggest loss for that team, do you feel like, Gage?
Easily Simmons if he doesn't play, and unfortunately he's leaning towards not playing, so that's going to be a huge loss. Obviously, taking away guys like Tyreek Hill over the top, that's going to be massive. He's our best ranging safety who can cover both sides of the field. That's going to be a massive, massive loss. As far as Frank Clark, though, his role in Denver has been pretty reduced ever since he got here. He's mostly been a third down pass rushing specialist. We've seen a lot of our younger edge rushers, such as Jonathan Cooper and Nick Benito, our second-round pick from last year. Those guys have really stepped up and come into their own recently. We're still waiting for one of our starters, Baron Browning, to get back. Once he gets back, he'll probably be one of the main guys alongside Randy Gregory. And Gregory's kind of been a mixed bag. He had a really rough week 1, and then week 2, he did get a couple of coverage sacks, or at least one coverage sack, but it's not him winning at the line of scrimmage like he was paid the big bucks to do. He's not dominating as a true pass rushing edge rusher, So that's been a big disappointment. So I would say the biggest loss there would be Simmons, and it's unfortunately leaning towards him not playing. So we're going to have to depend on some young guys. Delarian Turner-Yell, our 5th-round pick from last year, he really struggled last week when he had to step into the game after Kareem Jackson got ejected for a really questionable hit on Logan Thomas, and that's the week after he got a big fine for a hit on Jacoby Myers that I felt like if you slowed it down, it wasn't as egregious. So Delarian Turner-Yell, and then our 6th-round pick from this year at safety, J.L. Skinner, those guys are really going to have to step up if Justin Simmons cannot go.
Yeah, it's almost a canceling out, not 100% because they don't necessarily line up against each other most of the time, but Justin Simmons and Jalen Waddle, 2 guys that at the very least at the moment look like they're not going to be able to go. Donovan, when you look at what's going on with Waddle right now, he still hasn't practiced. It's Thursday. Not sure how much work he's going to be getting with the team. And also, let's be real, the Dolphins right now don't have a good reputation for handling concussions based off everything we had to deal with last year with Tua. with all that being said, how do you think we should handle Jalen Waddle going into this game?
Being that he hasn't at least been a limited participant as of Thursday, I don't think he's going to play. Technically speaking, he still has a chance if he's limited on Friday, and then he goes through the walkthrough as a full participant on Saturday. Then he could technically clear Sunday morning and play in the game. However, I don't think this is necessarily a thing that we should rush. I mean, that was a nasty hit that he took. It was just side of the helmet. So I don't necessarily like concussion's different because you don't necessarily need time to recover as much as you need like an ankle or a back or whatever.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Like it's not as limiting in your actual play ability. However,
I mean, Tua second half against the Packers last year, I think would say otherwise.
Well, he was playing with a concussion, so I'm saying like they go through it to make sure that they have like their full functionality and everything before they play again. So it's weird. I don't know how I feel about it because I'm like I almost want to say I don't want to rush him back, kind of like what I said with Teron Armstead last week. How I'm like, okay, I don't really want him to play against the Patriots because Kendall Lamb looked good, and it's kind of like almost something similar with the Broncos. But then again, it's like it's not something I view as a limiting factor that he will maybe have to endure long term. Like if Armstead were to play and he's dealing with those injuries, could aggravate something or whatever. You're not going to aggravate a concussion unless you get another concussion.
Yeah. That definitely makes sense. The lack of practicing definitely does concern me. You just kind of need to go through those motions throughout the week. Like he's talented enough of a player, kind of like with Teron Armstead. We saw a few instances last year where like if he doesn't practice all week and you just put him out there, there's likelihood is that he's going to go out there and do the job and be mostly himself. He might be a little slow. Also, he's still dealing with that other injury, so he's not at 100%. So with
guys
that,
like that in the league,
man. There is, and most teams you hope you have 1, 2, 3 of those guys that can just go out there and play. And Waddle in his young career so far, we really haven't had to see him do that. So it might be Tyreek, and Waddle. We'll see. You guys with the Broncos just got Jerry Jeudy back. He had 3 catches on 5 targets for 25 yards against Washington. Was definitely limited. So what is the feeling around his injury? Do we feel like he's around 100%? Is it still something that he might be on a snap count? What are you guys looking like?
I feel like he's still going to be limited because hamstring injuries are very difficult. They're notorious for re-injury. So I feel like the Broncos are trying to be smart and cautious with Jerry Jeudy. We've seen guys like Marvin Mims, our second-round pick from this year, step up. Brandon Johnson, an undrafted free agent from last year, who was really a training camp darling. He's kind of carved a role. He's the guy who had the catch on the Hail Mary. So those guys have kind of come into their own roles a little bit to where we have had to depend on Jerry Jeudy a little bit less. But in a game that's probably going to be a dogfight like this Dolphins game where Denver's going to have to score points to keep up with this team, I think that we're going to have to depend on Jerry Jeudy to take that next step forward in his recovery this week for sure. But at the same time, we're going to have to establish our run game in this one in order to wear down Miami's defense, go on those long sustained drives. The best defense to this high-powered, potent Dolphins offense is keep them on the sideline and not allow them to see the field. So that's going to be a big key for this Denver game plan this week, I feel like.
Yeah,
Speaking of the run game, the run game, Javonte Williams coming off the ACL, he's been pretty limited in his first 2 games. Plus, there's also, they've been continuously, kind of like the Dolphins, in the running back market, always looking at everybody that may be available. So do you think that Javonte Williams is not as recovered from the ACL injury as most people think he is? Do you think he maybe is not the same since his injury? Or do you think it's just precaution all around?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of a combination of all of that. It was frustrating in that Washington game because they started in that opening drive, especially. They got Javonte Williams going, and then on the second drive, that opened up the play action game. But in the second half, it felt like Washington started to load the box, which caused Denver just to abandon the run game altogether, which they just simply cannot do. So I feel like Javante doesn't quite have that same spring in his step yet. I'm hoping that'll come over time, but we've got other pieces in the running back room, such as Samaje Perine, who was grossly underutilized against Washington, the team that drafted him. You'd think he'd have a bit of a chip on his shoulder to go out there and piss off his old team, you know. But also with Jaleel McLaughlin, he's an undrafted free agent out of Youngstown State from this past year who really shined in training camp. He's got elite home run playmaking speed. And the Broncos did get him a touchdown last week, which was good to see. But I'm hoping we see more and more of Jaleel in this one because if the Broncos need the opportunity to strike quickly, then Jaleel can bring that for sure. So we have other pieces in the backfield besides Shavante, but you can see a little bit of limitations from him coming off of a very severe injury. I mean, he tore his ACL, his LCL, and his posterior lateral corner. I mean, those are three major functional elements of your knee. So that was a massive injury for him.
Yeah, I didn't know he did all that.
Oh yeah, he completely just blew it to crap. Like probably not as bad as what Nick Chubb's is. I don't think we still have the full diagnosis of what Nick Chubb's is, but it wasn't quite that bad. But when you're tearing multiple things in there, it's hard to come back from. I was actually expecting him to miss the beginning of the season. I was expecting like him and Breece Hall to probably come back around week 4. So just the fact that he's playing is kind of a surprise, but it hasn't been the Javonte that y'all knew when he was fully healthy. 3.8 yards per carry, only 96 yards between 2 games. In the ground game in general has kind of been rough, with Russell Wilson currently listed as your second leading rusher on the team. P. Ryan hasn't got as much looks as we expected him to. But speaking of Russell Wilson, yeah, I feel like he is just the hottest topic whenever you bring up the Denver Broncos. Just every individual week, like, okay, how did Russell Wilson play? And if you just look at his stat line, it's not inherently bad. It's just kind of lower than the standards that Russell Wilson has kind of set for himself. 485 yards, 5 touchdowns, interceptions, 7.3 per completion, 13th in the NFL right now in passing yards. So with what you've seen from him through 2 games, despite being 0-2, is there a little bit more positivity around him from this point last year, or is the jury still out what you feel about Russell Wilson?
I think that, yes, the jury's still out, but there's a lot more positive to take away. It feels like Russell looks a lot more confident and comfortable out there. In that second half of the Washington game, Russell had to depend a little bit more on straight drop back passing, which he's never really thrived in. He's always been a quarterback that's thrived off of play action and being able to set up those deep ball opportunities. So that's where he's been at his best, but he's worked the quick game pretty well. But anytime it's a drop back concept that doesn't have much to do with the quick game, he struggles with it. So there's a lot of positives to take away from Russell Wilson's performance over these last 2 games, but it's still not quite the same Russell Wilson that we saw in Seattle for 10 years, but it's much closer to that Russell Wilson than the Russell Wilson that we saw last year, who, quite frankly, looked like a broken quarterback.
Yeah, and speaking of all of that, technically speaking, I saw a stat line. It was who is this quarterback and who is this quarterback? Take a guess who, and it like revealed all the stats. And it was the 2 quarterbacks being Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes. And Wilson has a higher completion percentage so far, more yards so far, more touchdowns, better interception ratio, better QBR, better passer rating. And given it is just 2 weeks, but that does give you some hope with that. And also, who's your favorite player that is not a big name, like someone that we necessarily wouldn't know? But Broncos Nation might.
I actually already mentioned him, Jaleel McLaughlin. He's just been grossly underutilized.
Yeah, I remember you because I only know of him really because of you and then seeing him on that touchdown. He does look like, well, a slightly smaller Javonte Williams when Javonte was a rookie. That explosiveness, the shiftiness that he has. Yeah, that's gonna be nasty.
Yeah, absolutely. Defensively, another guy that's been underutilized, but if we were to utilize him, I feel like it would be a massive impact. Drew Sanders, our second round rookie out of Arkansas. This
Okay.
dude has he's got potential to be a big difference maker as a tackler because last week Washington gashed us in the second half on the ground and throughout the whole game really on screens. And that was because mostly our linebackers and Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton were struggling with tackling. So I'm curious to see if we see more Drew Sanders in this one because with Mike McDaniel as one of the best schemers in the NFL, and Denver native, got to shout that out, man. Former Broncos ball boy, this game's going to really mean something to him. But with Mike McDaniel, man, he's going to design some pretty clever screens to kill the Broncos defense in this one. So they need to be ready for that. And they need to have someone who's a little bit more sound with their fundamentals and tackling. And I feel like that's Drew Sanders.
Okay, nice.
Okay, so let's more move into the actual preview of the game and I don't know why I said and. The game's going to be at 1 o'clock on Sunday, the Dolphins' first home game of the season. It's your first away game, right? You guys played back-to-back home games? So, New experience for both teams, very different. Dolphins went on the road to Los Angeles, then went to Boston. We're kind of doing almost a four corners challenge of the country. It's just week 3. Whereas you've been comfortable at home so far. What was, I don't know off the top of my head, how successful were you guys on the road last year compared to at home?
Last year we won one road game. It was in London against the Jags.
Oh wow! So you didn't even win, technically speaking, a road game in America.
Yeah, it was horrible. This team could not win on the road to save their life. They had a couple of opportunities. I mean, we almost beat the Chiefs in Kansas City, but a really bad offensive pass interference call on Cortland Sutton, which would have extended Denver's drive and basically allowed them to run the clock out. That caused us to lose that game. It was unfortunate, but last year we could not win on the road. Sean Payton's teams, I believe, historically have done well on the road. They're really good at limiting pre-snap penalties with dealing with the crowd noise and stuff like that. That was a big issue for us last year. We were 29th in the NFL in pre-snap penalties last year, and a lot of them, I went back and looked, they came on the road. We did not do well at all handling crowd noise. So that's something I'm really going to be interested to see how well we do going into this game, just that aspect of it. Our first road game, I feel like that's going to be the big test.
Yeah, and well, you say big test, and I don't mean to be insulting of your team, but Donovan, definitely when we saw the schedule, when you saw looking at the Chargers, and then you got the Patriots, and then after this game you have the Bills. Just being honest, we did look at this game as, okay, this is a little bit of a little safety bump in between what is otherwise a pretty difficult start to the season. We're 2-0, they're 0-2. Donovan, do you still kind of feel that is the case going into this game?
Yeah, don't get me wrong, they looked a lot better early than I thought they would. So there's that. However, from what I've seen from this offense, I don't think there's anybody that can contain us at all. Especially, with the faults that the Denver's defense has, especially now with, Justin Simmons, who has the last 2 times we played, this man has terrorized us with game-ending interceptions. So with him possibly being out this weekend, I am extremely excited for what we can do, especially since now we have a much better offense than we have had in previous years, and I don't get to be terrorized by Justin Simmons again. So there's the hoping. But yeah, I definitely we can even if they're able to tear up our defense, whatever, we're gonna just come back out and our offense is gonna murder them.
That is definitely the ideal scenario. However, there is definitely still a chance that the Broncos hang into this game, and there's still definitely a possibility that the Broncos end up coming away with a victory. So, in your mind, Gage, what has to go right? What is the ideal game script for the Broncos to walk away from Miami up 1-2?
Well, I think I already alluded to it. Sustain long drives, get the ground game going. If we can go on 6, 7, 8-minute drives, that's going to be a key factor for us. And then we have to be able to be a better red zone offense, especially in that second half, man. It feels like we're a great first half team. We're a terrible second half team, it feels like, over the past couple of weeks. So if we can sustain the brand of football that we've been able to have in the first half for really all 4 quarters, then I feel like we're going to be in good shape. It's going to, again, be all about winning in the trenches. That's going to be another big one. I mean, obviously, if we can get a couple of sacks on Tua and make Tua uncomfortable and deliver some pressure up the middle, this would be a good game for Zach Allen to finally step up. So that's going to be a big one. Miami's also going to want to go on some long sustained drives to try to keep Denver's offense off the field and try to expose our weakness, which is our defense. And last week, Eric Bieniemy, Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, and the Commanders really exposed a big hole in our run game, in our run defense. So that's going to be a big thing that I feel like Miami's going to want to take advantage of with Raheem Mostert, Salvon Ahmed, and Devon Achane. So that's going to be something that if we can contain those guys, but at the end of the day, we all know who the biggest difference maker for Miami on the offensive side of the ball is, and that's number 10, man. This dude has given Denver so many headaches over the years that we played him in Kansas City. We have had virtually no answers for Tyreek Hill. Vance Joseph going against somebody like that, I'm really concerned, especially with someone like Mike McDaniel scheming him open in so many creative ways. Oh, man. And then an underrated element, I feel like, of this, Denver's going to have to handle going into Miami where it's going to be hot, it's going to be humid. The weather is just going to be disgusting for a team coming from Colorado right now. So that's a big home field advantage for the Dolphins. I'd feel a lot better, honestly, if the game were here in Denver than I do us having to travel down to Miami this time of year.
Yeah, it's not a fun environment, even from Dolphins fans having to deal with the home atmosphere, the home heat. Because yes, it is a little bit of a home field advantage, but I mean, even just sitting there in the stands, like that heat can get absolutely miserable. And especially if the other team is able to run the ball very well, which we saw last week, you guys weren't able to do well against Brian Robinson. And conversely, the Dolphins did a really good job with getting the ball to Raheem Mostert and Donovan. That's something that we talked about a couple times throughout the week leading up to the Patriots game, is be able to sustain drives, be able to hand the ball up to Raheem Mostert to get Achane maybe involved a little bit. Achane's going to have to be more involved, assuming that Salvon Ahmed isn't going to be playing. So do you have a strong belief, Donovan, that Raheem Mostert can replicate that performance from last week this Sunday?
I do have a feeling that he can, exceed what he did last week. I do think that, the Patriots now, they did play, a lot of 3 high safety, and they didn't really load the box as much. But with how Denver's run defense was when they knew Washington was actually going to run the ball, and given I do think Brian Robinson is a better running back than Mostert, but I do think Mostert has that speed and the ability to go and just get the extra yards when he does with his size. And then another player, you mentioned him, Achane, with Ahmed possibly being out. He hasn't practiced all week so far. Achane is going to get a lot of playing time. And I remember I was saying, like, throughout the game, we were watching it almost together. And I was like, they were using Ahmed, like, put him in the slot, then rotate him around. And they lined him up everywhere on the field. They lined up Ezukama everywhere on the field, kind of like what they did with Tyreek as well. And Achane was drafted because he has the ability to do that, because he has the catch ability, he has the speed, he has the shiftiness. And he's fully healed from his shoulder now. He's not on the injury report. I anticipate him having a much bigger role in this game than a lot of people think. And, especially, you don't want to give too many carries to Mostert with his injury history and his age. You want to make sure that he's going to be able to kind of stay fresh throughout the season. You want to kind of do it almost like a 50-50 split.
I really wanted Denver to draft Achane.
He's definitely a nice little utility weapon, and I might as go far to say that, and what I was going to ask you next is, he could be the X factor for the Dolphins on Sunday with Tyreek Hill going to be out there without Jalen Waddle, most likely. Raheem Mostert, is he able to replicate that performance in back-to-back weeks? There is a strong unknown when it comes to Devon Achane, what he's going to be. Donovan's been more of a fan of Achane than I have been. I definitely like a bigger athlete, somebody who in one of their first games isn't going to nearly break their shoulder because somebody landed on top of them. Just the reality of the situation. But he clearly is a very talented. That is the reality of the situation.
He got body slammed like he was in WrestleMania. Like,
this is the NFL. It happens. I mean, that's something that happens on a regular basis, and especially somebody who's running. You're running at 350-pound men. It is something you have to worry about. But he is going to have an increased role, and I'm very interested to see if he can take what Savon Ahmed has done. And we've been very complimentary of Savon Ahmed over the last few days about how he played against New England. He just seems so decisive. He looked sharp. His ability to cut was much better than we've seen in previous years. So I might go far to say he is the X factor for the Dolphins. We'll see what ends up his role actually ends up being on Sunday. Gage, if you had to choose one player for the Broncos that you think is the X factor for this game, who would it be?
Probably Jerry Jeudy, if I'm going to be honest, man. He really kind of floundered last week. I mean, he was limited because of his hamstring injury. This is going to be a game where we need Jerry Jeudy to have a big day. 7 catches for over 100 yards would be ideal, but I would gladly take, 5 catches for 54 yards if those catches came in key clutch moments, but we just need Jerry Jeudy to make an impact in this game for sure. So I'd say he's the biggest X factor for us right now.
And what about defensively? What do you think defensively your biggest X factor is going to be?
Zach Allen. Because he's really disappointed these last couple of weeks, and I feel like if there's a weakness on Miami's offensive line right now, it's probably interior. So you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this is going to be one where Zach Allen is going to need to step up.
It depends on how healthy the offensive line is. If Teron Armstead plays, then the weak point is definitely in the middle. I'm not really sure where the weak point is right now because they've all kind of stepped up on paper. Yes, the weak point is because you have a center that might snap the ball over to his head every other play. Left guard Isaiah Wynns played pretty well, and Robert Hunt's kind of returned to the form that we saw 2 years ago. Really struggled last year. And on the tackles, Kendall Lamb has stepped up and played some of his best football in his career. Same thing with Austin Jackson. I mean, Tua's only been sacked one time in the first 2 games so far this season. So the offensive line is definitely massively improved. So you're going to need to find somebody on that defensive line to bust forward and do something that the Chargers and the Patriots have not been able to do.
Yep. I feel like since you guys are starting Kendall Lamb at left tackle, I'm going to also throw in our edge rushers, Nick Benito, Jonathan Cooper, Randy Gregory. We're going to need one of those guys, because, I mean, Kendall Lamb's a guy I know has historically gotten beat with speed rush edge rushers, so that's somebody who fits the Nick Benito mold. So I really would like to see Nick Benito be matched up against Kendall Lamb.
Yeah, Kendall Lamb actually has been our highest rate offensive lineman, ironically, because he is our backup offensive tackle. But that's kind of funny. Jacob, who do you think is going to be the X factor for the Dolphins defensively and offensively?
Well, mine depends on if the person who's supposed to start in his position does start. I'm going to go with Andrew Van Ginkel to see if he can have a very similar game to what we saw last week against the Patriots. I mean, he was just a wrecking machine, had a sack. If he was there a split second sooner, could have had maybe a strip sack fumble, ended up being an incomplete pass. And he just performed excellently in place of Jalen Phillips. We all kind of assumed it was going to be Emmanuel Ogbah if Jalen Phillips was unable to go. That injury happened after we recorded the preview last week, so we didn't actually get to talk about the Jalen Phillips injury. And Andrew Van Ginkel just stepped up there, and you couldn't really tell the difference between what him and Phillips are able to do. Looked very athletic. He did great to get to the quarterback. Was just given their right tackle work all game long. And I see you smirking there because I know he's been one of your guys, kind of similar to how you've defended Igbenogany last few weeks, how you've defended A-Chain. So I know that makes you happy to hear that I think Andrew Van Ginkel can be that guy to replicate his performance on the defense.
I am very happy. So I'm going to go ahead and I agree with you there, but I'm going to go ahead and throw out another name, and that's going to be Cam Smith, our second round rookie corner. Arguably, a lot of people were saying that he's may have been one of the top corners in the draft. We haven't seen him play, and I think a lot of that is mainly because Vic Fangio doesn't trust young guys. I'm sure Gage can attest. To that. But we saw Eli Apple struggle last week, and today Vic Fangio actually commented that, he had a rough game, but he made some good key plays, but everything is going to be evaluated, meaning Cam Smith has had a lot more reps at corner this week. So there's a good possibility he can either split time or maybe even start opposite of Xavier Howard this week. And I've been clamoring for this for the entire season so far. I just very much hate Eli Apple.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the mindset. I trust whatever the coaching staff says, whatever they're doing. I think we have the right guys at those positions, especially head coach, defensive coordinator. I'm not sure if there's a better head coach, defensive coordinator, especially when you have an offensive-minded head coach. I'm not sure if there's a better combination than what we have with Mike McDaniel and Vic Fangio. So I lean towards, hey, these guys clearly know what they're doing, so let them go. But even Vic Fangio said, like, maybe we should think some things out, and anything's on the table, or however exactly worded it is. So maybe that ends up being the case. I've actually meant to ask you earlier, speaking of coaching staff, this is, like I said, the first two games under the new regime. And what's your thoughts been so far on how Sean Payton has been as the Broncos head coach?
Sean Payton, I feel like, has done really, really well with play calling. That's one thing. I mean, I've complained a little bit about him abandoning the run in the second half, but a part of that is due to defensive adjustments. But the play calling, I feel like, has been fantastic. He's schemed guys open. It's just been so refreshing compared to last year's offensive play calling, which was just a jumbled crap show, basically, trying to jumble everything Russ wanted to do with everything Hackett wanted to do. This offense has a clear structure with Sean Payton. And as far as building, the culture and the team dynamic that he wants to build, that's going to take time. He's going to want to get his own guys in here. This is going to be a multi-year rebuild project with Sean Payton, I feel like, but the first steps of it have shown a lot of optimism. So I'm really excited that this team actually has a general direction, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, I feel like I'm watching the Broncos offense from last year, just with the lack of structure, trying to implement too many things, doing some of the Vic Fangio coverage schemes combined with Vance Joseph's defensive fronts and some stuff that like other guys want to do. It's just so frustrating watching this defensive scheme because it feels like it has no direction, no structure. We've got pre-snap penalties galore on the defensive side of the ball, offsides. We lead the league in personal fouls on the defensive side of the ball, I believe. So it's just been sloppy, undisciplined, and very disappointing considering what we expected this defense to be this year here in Broncos country. But I mean, I feel like the Broncos at least got the head coach hire right, and that's the first big step.
Yeah, I like that answer. I like that answer. Jake, so we talked about Sean Payton, talked about Mike McDaniel. What do you think, this matchup, you have one that kind of like an inexperienced head coach, second year in the league. Then you have Sean Payton, who's done it all, won a Super Bowl. And then you have Tua, who is currently 9-0 against Super Bowl winning coaches.
Yeah, and Sean Payton was one of those guys that was pretty vocal, especially last year. He said that Teddy Bridgewater was going to take Tua's spot. And it's interesting that it says that because one of the comparisons of Tua, the biggest comparison of Tua, is Drew Brees, somebody that Sean Payton had the luxury of coaching for such a long time, got a Super Bowl, had some playoff runs, and had a lot of success with. So it was very interesting to see that he had that. But yeah, Tua just I think it's a little overrated when you say somebody's a winner, especially with a game that you have 53 men on the active roster. But Tua just doesn't lose games. I mean, I don't think he's ever had a losing season in his career, going all the way back to probably even like middle school. Obviously had all that success with Alabama and has had a rocky few years with the Dolphins. But during that time, he has won a lot of games, even if it was during the Brian Flores era where that defense was carrying along most of the way, and that's what got a lot of the praise. And now it's shifted over to the offensive side. Now the defense is trying to catch up. He just keeps finding a way to win, and the team keeps finding a way to win. And Mike McDaniel, just the jump that I've seen in him, and we talked about this in the post-game stream last week against the Patriots, was that I've seen such growth in McDaniel, his play calling, his situational awareness. We've seen a cleanup in offensive penalties. We saw a lot of false starts. We saw a lot of holding calls, especially as the year went on last year. And part of that was, who's at quarterback. Like, God knows any particular game last year who the quarterback was going to be. We could end up starting Tua, and next
Skylar
thing you know,
Thompson season, baby.
oh, please, dear God, don't say that name ever again. He sucks. I cannot stand Skylar Thompson, and I've preached from the mountaintops. I think he's not good at football.
He feels about Skylar Thompson what I feel about Keon Crossen and Eli Apple. Eli Apple's my new Keon Crossen.
I mean, he's just not good. That's not.
Is Eli Apple your new Eric Rowe?
Oh no, Eli Apple's our new Eli Apple. Like, he's just him. You can't really compare anything to that. But
that's one thing I wanted to bring up with Eli Apple, man. Pay attention for Sean Payton to maybe scheme up Marvin Mims on Eli Apple in hopes of getting a big play.
I mean, you could put anybody over there in one way or another. I mean, because he was guarding Devontae Parker, which is very different from Mims. But Devontae Parker, who is, I think he was like statistically at one point when he was in Dolphins uniform, the literal worst wide receiver in the NFL at getting separation, and yet it felt like every single play Devontae Parker had separation against Eli Apple. So it was just mind-boggling how a receiver who cannot get open was open every single play. So now, what I was talking about before about trusting the defense and trusting the coaches, like, okay, now I think we need to make some changes. We have some actual football coming up here soon, so we're going to start to get towards the end here a little bit, and we always end up these previews with giving our predictions on how the game is going to go. Gage, as you are the guest on the channel, give us your thoughts on how the game is going to go. Give us a score prediction at the end. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think this is going to be a game where Denver gets some more things to go right for them on the offensive side of the ball. I think Sean Payton's going to really predicate cleaning up some of the communication errors that Denver had last week. We had to burn all 3 of our timeouts before the 5-minute mark in the first or in the second quarter. That was a big issue because of some long-winded play calls were taking too long to get from Sean's mouth to Russ's headset to the huddle, and then get up to the line, do your dummy cadence, identify the mic, do all your protection checks, all that stuff. So just cleaning up that operation is going to be predicated in this one. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if you see a little bit more of an up-tempo offense hurrying to the line of scrimmage from Denver, but then taking the play clock all the way down at the line of scrimmage and then snapping the ball, if that makes any sense. Kind of like the way Peyton Manning would operate his no huddle offense, but still be able to control the clock and manipulate the time of possession and all that stuff. So that's something that I could very much see. Defensively, man, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm worried that Tyreek Hill's going to get at least 2 big plays on our defense. I feel like our run defense is going to struggle against Raheem Mostert and potentially Devon Achane, as well as Salvon Ahmed if he does play. Score, I think Denver's offense is going to get some things together. They're going to have some big plays. They're going to have some big deep balls. But I think I'm going to go Miami 35-24.
Wow, going against your own team, that is something you'll never find over here on Miami Dolphins today. I don't care. Call us biased, call us delusional sometimes. I also, like we were talking about beforehand, I also run an FAU channel, and back-to-back weeks I've said that FAU is going to win. Donovan, don't bring up the fact that 3 weeks ago I said we can beat Clemson. Obviously, I know that was ridiculous. I get it. But Donovan, how do you think the game's going to go on Sunday?
So I kind of agree with Gage that I think their offense is going to get something going a little bit. I do think that we end up playing Cam Smith at one point in the game or another, whether Eli Apple gets burned and Vic Fangio just says, screw it, rookie, get in there. Or, they just leave Eli Apple in to get absolutely smoked. But I do think that they're going to score some points. I don't think it's going to be as low scoring as it was in the Patriots game. Offensively, even without Waddle, I'm extremely confident in this offense against that defense, particularly because they don't really have a second corner. The Patriots have one of the better secondaries in the entire league, and that's how they were able to kind of slow us down. However, now we go up against a defense that has one good player in their secondary. So I do think it's going to be
2 if they're healthy.
2 if they're healthy, but Justin Simmons probably not going to play. Yeah. Hopefully. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to say it's going to be Dolphins 38, Broncos 28.
Okay. I definitely think this game is going to be a higher scoring affair than it was last week for the Dolphins. We had a high scoring game week 1 against the Chargers, and we knew going to that game against Bill Belichick and that Patriots defense that it was not going to be quite at all the same. This week, I think it is going to be different as both teams, that you look at the circumstances for both teams. You look at the Broncos, it's almost a desperation game for the Broncos. Now they do have 2 winnable games. I did misspoke earlier when I said that's going to be a rough stretch of games. That rough stretch of games starts after the Jets game. They have the Bears and the Jets, and then you got the Chiefs at Kansas City. You have the Packers. You have the Chiefs again 2 out of 3 weeks. You have the Bills. You have the Vikings. You have the Browns. So it's a really rough stretch there. And you guys definitely have to win each of your next 2 games if you have hope of making the playoffs. But you definitely don't want to start 0-3. I don't know what the statistics are on teams that start 0-3 that end up making the playoffs, but I imagine it's not that good. So I feel like there's definitely going to be a lot of desperation with the Broncos to just give it everything they've got. And Sean Payton, established head coach, he's going to be prepared. You're not getting the same defensive preparedness, with Vance Joseph. I wasn't even a big fan of Vance Joseph when he was the defensive coordinator over here. I was kind of surprised he got a head coaching job. So I don't really trust him on defense, especially when you do have arguably your second best player on defense who's likely going to be missing the game. So I think the Dolphins will have a better opportunity this week to put up a lot of points. 35, I guess, is the number. I'm going to stick with 35 also, and I'm going to say 35-21. The Dolphins get the victory over the Broncos. Clean sweep. Was kind of expecting you to pick the Broncos just because it's fun being fans and trying to be a little unrealistic. Like, we have to play the Chiefs later this year, and I'm going to say that we're probably going to win by 40. Like, that's just it's just my mentality with it is that, hey, be a fan, be as wild and go out there as you can. But I definitely understand being a little more pessimistic with what you've seen from the team so far.
I still think Denver beats Kansas City one time this year. I don't think they sweep us this year. I don't think it's going to be at Arrowhead on Thursday night on a short week, but after that second game in Denver following the Packers game, I think Denver's got a strong chance to win that one.
I mean, I definitely hope you guys do. It might be the number 1 seed or not for the Dolphins. Might be a bye week or not for the Dolphins. So we're going to wrap things up there. But before we go, I'd like to talk to you about your other teams that you've gotten root for, because you got to see a championship in Denver the last 2 years. You got to see the Denver Nuggets win a championship in the NBA, and then you got to see the Colorado Avalanche win a championship in the NHL. So what has it been like recently being a Colorado sports fan? Because us here in South Florida, we've gotten so close with pretty much every single sport. Panthers in the finals? Nope. FAU in the Final Four? Nope. The Miami Heat in the Final Four? Nope. Or in the NBA Finals? Nope. We got so close, haven't got there, but you've seen back-to-back years of a team that you support in your city, in your state, win. What has that been like?
So with the Avs, I mean, I'm not the biggest hockey fan, so I mean, I support the Avs because they're a hometown team, and getting to see them win a championship definitely energized the city, but it was different with the Nuggets, man. What the Nuggets were able to do, that run was just special, dude. The group of guys in that locker room were just the most selfless group of guys. It reminded me so much of the 2015 Broncos team where, oh crap. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, you're good on our end.
Okay, I unplugged my mic, so we're good. But it reminds me so much of the selflessness of that 2015 Broncos team where everybody just did what they had to do to get the win. They didn't care about individual statistics or anything like that. I mean, just Nikola Jokic, you can't disrespect the guy anymore. The dude is one of the best basketball players on the planet, and this was really the first year that I got emotionally invested in the Nuggets, and it was a damn good year to do that.
Yeah, that definitely must be nice because, I mean, Donovan, we just in 6 months, I mean, especially for me personally, like I was there in Houston when FAU lost in the Final Four on that last game-winning shot. Donovan and I, you and I went to Game 4, was it, of the Panthers, Panthers and the Knights. 4. Game 4. We didn't go to the Heat series, but we were sitting sometimes in Ale House watching the game. We've had the Dolphins nearly upset the Bills in the first round. The Marlins might make the playoffs. Like we've seen a lot of success all the way up to the point of that championship. So we've just been so agonizingly close, and we might be now having that here with the Dolphins. This is a team that we finally have that could actually push forward for a Super Bowl.
Yep. And then also, the Colorado Buffaloes, man.
Oh my gosh, how did I forget about
area
them?
is the center
Yeah.
of college sports right now. I mean, dude,
Oh
what
yeah,
Coach Prime
jeez.
has done over there in Boulder is just nothing short of incredible.
Oh, don't be humble about it. I think they're the center of the sports world. Jeez, that was a massive bolt of lightning.
Yeah.
They're the center of the sports world right now. I mean, Deion Sanders, Shador, Travis Hunter. Like, there is no bigger story than what Colorado's doing, being literally the worst Power 5 program last year, going to be I think they're 16th overall right now, going to play Oregon. If they beat Oregon this week, massive chance that they're probably going to be in the top 10, and then they have USC down on the schedule, they have Oregon State, so they have other opportunities that they can prove themselves, and, best case scenario, they end up in the playoff at come the end of the year, and I'd be so excited to see that.
Yeah, I drove up to Boulder the day of the Rocky Mountain Showdown just to see what was going on up there, man. And dude, the energy in that town is just electric. The CU fans are out in droves. I got to go up and see the ESPN Sports Center, Pat McAfee and all those guys. That was really cool.
That's
watching
big.
them. Yeah, I mean, when you see big names like that up here in your general area, man, it's so fucking, or it's so. It's so,
We don't
it's so
care.
cool.
Go ahead.
I know. I have a swear jar over on Denver Broncos Syndicate for my live streams because I tell Gray that's the one time, man, where it's going to happen at least once. But, oh, it's just so awesome to see the energy that Coach Prime has brought to the city of Boulder and just the whole Front Range area, Denver, this whole area. It's just awesome.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's crazy. But yeah, with South Florida, man, even Tua talked about it in his press conference today. He's like, I feel like South Florida is ready for a championship. That they've come so close. Now I know you have a thing about talking about championships before they're won, Jacob, with your little, wiping up your forehead over there.
No, that was from like, oh my gosh, I'm so ready.
Oh, I mean, what he said was so factual, and I think it was taken out of context because when I first saw the comment, it was like, oh, Tua's talking about South Florida's ready for a championship, and when I actually watched the video, he alluded to the Panthers were in the finals, the Heat were in the finals, Miami and FAU were in the Final Four. Like the Miami South Florida sports have come so close in the last like 6 months, 7 months that it's just like. We're ready. We are ready. And he's like, and now we're gonna try to do it. Now we're gonna try to, now given that's the goal for every team, but we clearly have one of the best offenses, if not the best in the NFL, and definitely a top 3 or 4 team right now in the NFL.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Wins the Super Bowl, dude. When your NFL team wins the Super Bowl, it's unlike any other feeling. I mean, watching the Nuggets win was so awesome to watch, but when the Broncos won the Super Bowl in 2015, that's like the mecca of the whole sports world right there.
Yeah, we haven't got to experience a playoff win, nonetheless, in our entire lifetime. I mean, since we've been watching football, last time the Dolphins won a playoff game was, I think, 2000, 2001, like that season. So I was 9 months old when I was like 10 or 11 months old last time the Dolphins won a playoff game. This guy here, Donovan, was like, what, you're right, 2?
3. Yeah, 3 years old.
Not win a Super Bowl, not get to a conference championship game, win a playoff game. Win! All you do is win one playoff game. We haven't seen that virtually in our entire lifetimes. So it's been a very painful experience. But I hope the best for y'all for the rest of the season, just not on Sunday. It should be a very good game. I'm not going to be there, unfortunately. Donovan and I do have season tickets. Ironically enough, I'll be literally, football-wise, as far away from the Dolphin Stadium as possible. I'll be at the Seattle Seahawks game over in Seattle, going over there on vacation, leaving tomorrow. So fingers crossed I don't die. But it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun for the Dolphins getting their first home game. Fun having the Denver Broncos come to town. And like I said, hope the best for y'all this season. Just not on Sunday. But with all that being said, we appreciate y'all very much for tuning into the live stream today. If anybody who's dropped in here is a Denver Broncos fan, if you're watching now, if you're watching later, go ahead and get in the description. I put I put Gage's channel. Don't lie. took me so long to get that out. Put Denver Broncos Syndicate down there, the link for his channel over in the description down below. So make sure you go over, check out his content. There's really good stuff. And also, there's a whole host of Syndicate channels. So if you're interested in any other teams, we got Vikings, we got Steelers, Jets, us.
Colts.
We have Colts?
Yep, we got.
We
Colts.
do have Colts.
Yep. Oh, we do have Colts now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. So yeah, if you're interested in some Denver Broncos content, go over to his channel, give him a like button, hit the like button on his videos, hit the subscribe button over there, and do that for us over here too. But we're going to wrap up here. We are about 15 minutes from some actual football starting, so we're going to go over there and watch just like you guys are. But thank you all very much for tuning in. We'll be live every Wednesday. I will not be here next Wednesday. Donovan, are you still planning on going on live next Wednesday?
Yeah, I'll be live next Wednesday, giving my full breakdown for the upcoming games.
Yeah, again, I'll be on a plane ride back next Wednesday when he's live. Maybe have a guest. And you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I do.
Do it, please, please. Okay, but with all that being said, thank y'all very much for watching. Again, like, subscribe, tune in to the videos. If you missed part of this stream, we'll be uploading videos the next few days leading up to the game on Sunday. Gage, thank you again for joining us here today.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
Of course. All right, thank you all very much for watching. Have a great rest of your